Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about the 2023 Dead Space Remake, which is a pretty popular IP. Even if you haven't played this game, you probably know the name, or you know the suit, or the plasma cutter, the weapons. This game is pretty popular and pretty iconic for its time. So when the Dead Space Remake was announced and launched in 2023, it felt like a big moment. EA was going back to something that worked and it was giving it another shot. I think that this was a test to see if Dead Space still mattered or if they could do anything with it, and not necessarily just a cash grab. But after just finishing the remake just a few days ago, which is too many years too late, I had a great experience with it, especially because I didn't really remember the original game all too well. And it left me asking, is Dead Space alive again, or is Dead Space dead? Does EA have any intentions with this IP, and what's going to happen next? So if you have never played this game or you've never experienced it, Dead Space is a sci-fi survival horror game that's set aboard the USG Ishimura. You play as Isaac Clarke, an engineer who's sent to investigate what went wrong when the mining ship went completely silent. What follows is a slow descent into horror, paranoia, and psychological breakdown. The remake stays extremely faithful to the original, and it modernizes the visuals, controls, and level design with a few introductions to new story arcs and updates to what is already a great narrative. This game isn't a reimagining, it's a restoration of a great title and a great IP. Combat in Dead Space is pretty standard for survival horror. You're not going for headshots with this one, you're actually dismembering your enemies, trying to cut off the limbs, and that's key to survival. There's a wide variety of weapons that make this possible, and the remake gives you so many different options on how you can use these. Not only do these weapons have a lot of variety to them, but there's also multiple ways to fire them and use them. And having them at your disposal really makes you feel like you can be powerful even in a very weak and vulnerable state. In this game, boss fights and other interactions are clearly inspired by Resident Evil, especially Resident Evil 4, with big enemies that have weak points that you can target easily and are easily identifiable as almost eye-like. Combat does lose a little bit of its impact towards the end because it becomes a little bit repetitive and you become used to the enemy design, but by then the game has actually replaced this fear with stress and pressure, which worked for me. One of the strongest parts of this IP is the story and the atmosphere. It's not a power fantasy. You almost feel like you're never winning. Every time you complete a mission, it usually leads to a setback. Something breaks, something goes wrong, or someone dies, and you have to figure out a new plan. This is a constant feeling of failure and desperation that keeps the tension high from start to finish. The story is heavy, bleak, and unsettling, and it really kept me engaged to wanting to know what was going to happen next. I will say, it is quite demoralizing to play because there's very few highs. Anytime you think you're doing something right, you're going to lose, or something bad's going to happen and you're going to have to do something different. I think this was really good and a great way for them to also show you the ship that you're inhabiting. You had to go back and backtrack and experience different parts of the ship on multiple different occasions, and it felt like I was actually mapping out this random ship that I had never been on before. I thought that the story and the atmosphere and the way that the game played was good, and it kept me engaged from start to finish. Visually, this game also looks great. The Ishimura feels lived in, industrial, and genuinely terrifying with all the things that are crawling around it. Lighting, particle effects, and environmental details are excellent. The audio design and camera weren't perfect for me. There were plenty of times where enemies would kill me from behind without a noticeable audio clue, or I would get caught or I wouldn't see them, and I found that to be a little frustrating. But overall, the enemy design is pretty awesome. I should be able to hear these enemies coming at me, and like I said, that was frustrating, but that doesn't take away from the fact that this game is beautiful. I will say, these frustrating deaths did lead to quite a few unskippable cutscenes being rewatched because checkpoints are very spread out. And unless you save almost every other minute, you are going to have to go back and replay some of these parts pretty frequently, unless you're just that good at the game, and I'm just not that good at the game. Again, maybe I just need to learn how to get good or get better at this game, but I also found that movement and enemy interaction can be pretty frustrating. Enemies can't be shoved or displaced, and if they're in your way or you get cornered, there's no way out. These enemies can take a lot of damage for you to take them down, and you have to hit them in some pretty specific locations. So if multiple come at you, or if you back yourself into a corner, there's no way out. There's no melee for you to be able to get out and save yourself, and it's essentially a game over screen guaranteed. I found this to be frustrating and generally unfair because the camera and the audio design just didn't help me. I will say it is still fun, and it did increase the tension, and I felt that I had to do more in order to survive, but it was still a point of contention and frustration for me. I actually got Dead Space Remake for free because I'm a PS Plus Essential member, and with that being said, it's absolutely worth free. I think you can get this game on sale for about $50, and I still think it's worth that. I put about 18 hours into it to go through one playthrough, and I'm actually tempted to go through and finish it in New Game Plus. I had a good time, the story kept me engaged, and the atmosphere is excellent. I genuinely didn't want to stop playing, even if I was ready to figure out what happens at the end of the game. If I dive back into it, I'm sure I'll still have fun. As a remake, this is one of the better ones out there. Back to my original question, is Dead Space dead? Unfortunately, I think the answer is yes. EA has reportedly turned down a Dead Space 4 that was pitched to them after the success of the Dead Space remake. As of right now, there's also been no confirmation of a Dead Space 2 remake, and I really think this is a capable IP that should be brought into the modern era. They've proven that not only is this game still relevant and of interest to people, but also you can really make a good game with these characters and with these game mechanics. I hope I'm wrong, and I'm hoping that EA has something in their back pocket and a plan for this IP. I just don't believe they do. And it would really break my heart if this was just a cash grab for EA, because this is such an inspirational game for so many things that we have in the modern era. But as of right now, Dead Space feels paused. It doesn't feel dead, but it also doesn't feel alive. I guess we'll have to see what happens with it in the next half decade or so. But that's just my opinion and what I think is going to happen with the Dead Space IP. Overall, Dead Space is a fantastic survival horror experience, even if I experienced it in 2025. The remake respects the original, it improves on it in meaningful ways, and it delivers a tense, memorable experience. But the future of the franchise is still uncertain. I would love to know what you guys think in the comments. Do you want to see a Dead Space 2 remake? Do you want to see a Dead Space 4? Do you think they should just leave it where it is? I mean, that would go out on a high with this remake being pretty successful. Overall, I look forward to hearing what you guys have to say in the comments and look forward to talking to you in the next one.